Hello, my name is Dr. Sabrina Greenlee, and October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And today we hope to educate, uplift, and empower the community. So ladies, I want you to introduce yourselves and what is your relationship to domestic violence and how does it mean to you? When you hear the word domestic violence, what does that mean?
My name is Dr. Robin Williams, and I am also Minister Robin Williams. And domestic violence to me, my introduction was childhood trauma. I watched my relatives, uncles, aunties, grandmother, my mom, all become very volatile towards each other. Love their whatever dating partner they had at the time was very volatile, very 3D in my face. I saw it growing up. I thought it was normal. I thought it was an everyday part of life. And as I served in the Marine Corps and then became a police officer, I ended up dating someone 13 years older than me, and that was like face-to-face, real-on domestic violence, where the victim looks like the villain in the eyes of a lot of people because I refused to do what I was taught to do, which was follow through with a report. I would call 911, but I would always allow that person to talk me out of it. And so that's my introduction to it. And how I feel about domestic violence is I feel shame, anxiety, depression, but redemption.
I'm Deborah Duncan. I'm the host of Great Day Houston, where we get to share lots of wonderful stories like this. But when you say domestic violence, I think about my childhood, and I didn't realize that till later in life. But I had a mom who would throw hands, and my dad would cower to her. I didn't know how that impacted me in relationships until my very first boyfriend in serious relationship was the star athlete at school, and I felt like I was a nobody. And because he was a star athlete, I thought I must be making him mad. This is all my fault. So when he would hit me and he would control me, when he would do all kinds of things to diminish my whole personality and my light, I would follow through. And of course, I could never get it right, as we all know. Nothing would ever be right. And so I had to do a deep dive into where that came from in me. Why did I have that lack of self-esteem until I could, come out of it and find myself and understand that that's not the way that I should have been treated, not the way anyone should be treated.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Burrows. I am a physician with UT Physicians here in Houston. I am an obstetrician gynecologist, and my connection with domestic violence is through my patients and how I help them to recognize situations that they are in and help to guide them with resources so that they may find the opportunity to make a change or to make a pivot. And so because we know that domestic violence actually affects 30% of women globally, this is something that we, especially as healthcare providers, must be aware of and often have to be able to open up the conversation so that patients feel comfortable sharing what's happening with them behind closed doors. And so I try to create a safe space so that women feel the opportunity to discuss what is happening personally, and then therefore I try to help them from a professional standpoint with guiding them and providing resources.
Oh, that's good. So speaking of safe place, what do you ladies think about when there is a woman who is in an abusive relationship but is scared to get out? So if you could tell me a few things that you would, if you encountered a woman, let's just say, Deborah, someone came on your show and it's evident that this woman is going through abuse, but she takes a moment to give you maybe a grab on your arm, or she kind of lets you know that she's going through an abusive relationship. I want each of you ladies to tell me, like, what advice would you give her in that moment?
Yeah.
Like, what would you say?
And that's happened several times with me. The first time was when I literally said to my roommate in college, here's what's happening, right? And so I borrow from that experience. But the first thing I do is I listen without judgment. And then I ask, do you want help? Because we have to have a game plan. And as you know, there are several organizations in town, like the Houston Area Women's Center, and where you can literally lay out a game plan, because sometimes it can be dangerous. Sometimes it's as easy as saying, just don't call them back, block them, right? But oftentimes when you're deep into the relationship, it's not that easy. And what you also have to struggle with is that woman's self-esteem and that thing called I love you, or you
Yes.
think I love you.
Yes.
Because we know how this relationship goes. I started out in college with this guy saying I was the most beautiful girl on campus. I'm like, we're at UT. There's a bunch of beautiful people. I know I'm not the most beautiful girl on campus, but you start to believe them, that they
Right.
really are in love with you. And then all of a sudden, these little things start to pick you apart. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself in a position of servitude, of trying to prove to them how much you love them, no matter how badly they treat you. So I know when a woman comes to me, it's hard sometimes to know, are you really ready? And you can't push, but you also have to look at, safety and things like that. So it's really sitting down and having a game plan and having like professionals like you who can help guide somebody through the exit.
Absolutely.
My biggest thing would be to, when you call 911, don't use it as a weapon or a scare tactic.
That's good.
Follow through.
That's good.
Biggest regret is getting talked out of following through with 911. 911 shows up to the scene. There's clear evidence of domestic violence. This person is looking at you, puppy dog eyes, pleading, you're going to take everything away from me, that you're going to destroy my life.
I thought you loved me.
I thought you loved me. You've been wanting to do this. You hated me from the beginning. They're guilt tripping the victim and let them know
Guilt
that.
tripping. That's yes. That's
And
it.
they're shaming you. They're putting you through a process of shame in front of people you call for
And
help.
the crazy thing is you actually question yourself, don't you? You're like thinking, what? I did do something wrong.
Yeah.
This is my fault.
Because it is mind games.
Yeah, it's a mind game
Yeah.
at the scene, and so many times you're looking at the officer is waiting for you to say yes or no if there are no visible signs, because domestic violence does not always produce visible signs. It could have been a choke, it could have been hair pull, or maybe a smack that didn't leave a bruise, but it's up to you to say yes or no. And in that moment, if you say yes, they're going to take that person away. They're not going to wait until the DA feels there's enough evidence to file charges, because then if by that time you can recant a statement. Now you go through the criminal justice system, and then it makes the prosecutor look like a fool. The police officer is like, well, she told me no, she didn't want to do it. You recant, this person's back in your home. So if you call 911, think of it as your lifeline, sink or die, and follow through, and do not look back. And that police officer is going to give you resources.
That's
and
the other mind game that we have with ourselves, though, is that we start thinking what society's going to
Yes,
think
we
about.
feel embarrassed,
You don't have the
shamed.
man on your arm, or what's going to happen with. Of course, there's so many different levels to this, especially if you are someone who you're thinking, how do I take care of the kids? If I
The
leave, how do
provider
I
is
take
out
care of
of
the
the
kids? How do
home.
I take care of myself? So there's all kinds of things that keep someone connected, and that abuser knows what those
Yes.
things
And
are.
that's control, because the majority of women that don't leave is already controlled, isolated, right?
Yes.
You can't see your mother, your friends,
Your family.
children, family, right? And then you try to leave, and it's like, financial reasons, why you can't get out, because they're telling you, you'll never be nothing without me.
Yes.
And you begin to believe that, right? And then how dare you leave? You don't have anything. So in my experience, going into the shelters, these women leave with nothing. They are ready to leave. They leave with nothing.
And I always tell them, they say with nothing, but the most important thing, and that's themselves.
It's
Your
yourself.
life.
Your life. Your life.
I think that's so important to highlight of getting to the point where you're ready, and knowing that even though we as friends and family members see somebody who might be in a situation where we feel like they should be ready, they might not be ready.
Well, yeah, we think they should be ready with the first hit or the
Right.
first demeaning word, right?
But it
that's
is
not how it
very
goes.
difficult and
So
hard
hard.
for someone to decide that they are going to walk away, even if they're financially stable.
Yes.
Sometimes that it's not about the finances. Sometimes the person is financially stable. They're financially independent, but that emotional connection and that emotional response that is there, that mental barrier of actually making a decision to uproot your life and start over, no matter what that looks like, whether you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to start over, so I'm going to start dating again, or I'm going to start over and we have the children. Children make things so much more complex.
Oh, you're right.
When you are trying to make a decision, like, is this best for the children? Would it be better for them to grow up in a household where two people are separated as opposed to being together? And these are all the real conversations that I have had with my patients and why they are struggling with that decision to leave. So I would say to somebody who is thinking about it that you need to prepare. You need to have a game plan in place. It might be easier to make the decision if you truly have a game plan in place, meaning you know where you're going to go. You know what it kind of looks like with those next steps. So utilizing resources. Number one, talking to people who can help you plan that next step.
And are you safe?
Are you safe? There are domestic violence agencies right here in Houston that can help you put together a game plan so that you don't feel like you're making a middle of the night decision.
Yes.
And then therefore, possibly there can be less regret because you have giving yourself the opportunity to develop a plan.
That's real good. Never leave in the spur of the moment. The majority of women who are fatally assaulted or literally find their fatality is when they're trying to leave in the moment, the moment of the crisis, in the moment of the abuse, right? And then that is when, because you leaving, they feel like they have no control, right? You've taken their control when you try to leave. And so I feel like having an exit plan, making sure that you have, even if you have to give the neighbor the kids' social security numbers, birth certificates, like even if you have to try to give your sister or your brother, someone, all of your identification or some clothes, here or there, never try to just leave when everything is happening in
An
that
emotional
moment.
decision is not such a sound decision.
Because you're taking their control, and I think that's very important. So speaking of that, I want you ladies to touch on some red flags, some things that you experience in relationships, if you can, that you can help women. What are some of the things that you can say, you know what, when you see this, or even in my experience, I knew that I was being abused, but I didn't know how to get out. Because it's easy to tell a woman, why didn't you get out? But there were so many red flags but I didn't want to get out. I was in a toxic relationship, one after another, but I normalized it, right?
Yeah.
What do we say to women who are in a relationship right now who thinks it's going on so long that it's normal, and you have just overlooked every instinct, everything that you were ever taught, and you're in this relationship right now?
I would say my experience was with an older gentleman, being 13 years older than me. It was a rap culture, music culture that promoted the term zaddy, where it was an older man that would be able to provide you with trips and accessories and money and things of that nature. And so because I was a young girl and I was looking at it, although I was already fully accomplished, successful, because I was admiring city girls and listening to the Megan Thee Stallion. I like Megan Thee Stallion as a person. But in the music, you hear how you're supposed to manipulate a person into giving you things and date an older person. And so because I was young and all my friends was doing it, and they were making it seem as if it was the best thing ever. And I had never dated someone that much older than me. I've always kept it around 2-year gap so that we can have something in common. So when I dated that older person, it was the lavish gifts off the top, over the top. It was the love bombing. Then it became, I always want to talk to you on the phone. I always want to talk to you on the phone. When you start seeing that controlling of your phone, what are you doing? Then, don't they want to isolate you from your friends. They want to tell you your friends are no good. That's why they don't have what you have. Because if they have what you have, then they will act differently. So then they alter your state of mind where, well, maybe if they had the nice car, maybe if they had the nice jewelry, they wouldn't be telling me to leave this person alone. They would want it too. So then he creates in your mind that they're jealous or envious of you. And in all actuality, it's not. And then it becomes the aggression. It never starts off full-blown domestic violence. It's aggressive words, it's name calling, being rude, overly texting, overly aggressive, answer me now. Then they see how far they can take it. Then the first hit, I apologize. I had trauma growing up. My mom, I miss my grandma, and so then you're taking on the excuse, and you're like, I gotta love this older man. This older man was there way before you were born, and you're like, hey, he's 13, almost 20 years your
They
senior.
make you feel like
Who's gonna be that you? And then you owe them for the
gift. You're trying to
gifts.
fix them, so you become a fixer.
Yeah, and you can literally be their niece or daughter. And so for young ladies, if you're dating older men, this is not an attack on older men. Everybody's not a predator or anything like that. But young ladies, if you're dating older men, be careful. The same person that'll feed you will starve you.
Ooh,
So be careful. Don't let them rush into your home. Don't let them begin to control your day-to-day life. Put boundaries up. No.
Such a warped sense of love, but you talk about those pink flags that become red flags. For me, it was, I mentioned a little bit earlier how I was just the most perfect being ever. And then it started slowly with things like, I don't know why you would ever major in journalism and be on TV. Now, that girl right over there, she's really pretty. She should be on TV. You should just be my wife. And so when you start hearing things that are the opposite of the 3 words, I love you, and then they start getting harsher and more harsh and more harsh, that's when you get out. Because instead what a lot of us do is, because of our own hurts, right, and our own subconscious deficits, is we start to chase the love. And we start to explain, well, I know, but maybe I can be behind the camera, or I know, but maybe I can this, or I'm just going to try, whatever. And then the more I started ignoring the things that he'd say, then he'd move to the next step. That would be his cue to move to the next step. And then there's that first big slap, and you're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. It's just there's a lot of pressure being a ball player. There's a lot of pressure for this and pressure for that. And I'm thinking to myself in the back of my head is, I love you. That I love you should not come with a slap across the face. Second time it happened, I was done. And I always say to women that I talk to in the shelters, there but by the grace of God, there go I. Because had I not had a little bit of foundation or friends that stepped in, like literally stepped in front of me when he went to go hit me, then I could have married that person and had children and felt trapped. And so that would have done a lot more damage to my soul, but I was able to get out at that time and get the help that I needed. But you know what I love you looks like. We see it on TV, we see it on Hallmark greeting cards, and everyone I've ever spoken to has been through a tough relationship like this, is that you saw it, but we didn't have the wherewithal or the emotional maturity to be able to address it and wrangle it, right? Too many fears came up. Too much of, am I worth it? I must not be worth it. And if this person, he's right. If he's not loving me, then no one's going to love me. That's the thing, what you got to teach our young girls, what I love you really looks like, but more so what I love myself looks like too.
That is so true. I wasn't told I love you in the home.
Oh, me neither,
And so
ever.
it was real easy for someone to come in, and the first thing I fell for was, I love you. And I was like, oh, you love me? Like, you really love me? And yeah, I'm going to love you, and nobody else is going to love you. You see what your mom did to you? I would never do that to you. And this was at 14 years old. I remember I couldn't take my senior pictures because I had 2 black eyes.
Wow.
This was at the age of 17. So by the time I was 18, I had 2 children. By the time I was 20, I was struggling. And I remember just thinking that this is how I'm going to die, because I had turned my back on everybody in my family, and they were like, he's going to kill her. She's not going to be anything. Like, this is what she wants. Because what I did, called the police and recanted 1,000,000 times. And so everybody was tired of that. They was like, this is what she wants. He's going to kill her. but I had to get tired. I had to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. My mom told me one day, she says, you're going to know when you're tired, he's going to start looking ugly. Right? I looked over at him one day and he looked like a monster.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, my mama told me he was going to look ugly. I mean, he just looked like his face was just long. And I was like, I hate this man, right? But I still didn't know how to get out. I had 2 children and I had moved out of my mom's home. And so I get that, understanding that, but there was no way out for me. And I was determined that I was just as how I was going to die. And finally, a light bulb come on, and I was like, let me fight, not only for myself, but for the children. So I just want to segue into talking about the children. How many of you feel that when children see abuse, and I will say that my children saw me being abused, right? Mm-hmm. Or they heard it, per se, mm-hmm. because I thought, well, if the door was closed and they were in their room, then they wouldn't hear their mama getting beat. And that was such a lie, because they told me later, we heard everything. Mm-hmm. And me just trying to protect them, I didn't know they heard it. But how many of you feel that, as children grow up, they tend to be abusers because of the repeated behavior that they saw in the home? I want to elaborate on that.
The cycle of abuse that we try to interrupt.
That we try to hide.
Absolutely. So I think this is where statistics really kind of help us to understand the gravity of the situation. So in the U.S., 40% of women will experience some type or some level of domestic violence, whether they personally experience it or whether they have a 1-degree separation, meaning they are a child or they were a child that grew up in domestic violence, or they have a friend or family member who experienced domestic violence. But 40% of women in the U.S. have a personal connection to some type of domestic violence. With that being said, 30% of men also actually experience domestic violence. So this is not just a conversation that's limited to women, but there are also men right now who might be hearing our voices that are in the same situation where they are actually not the abuser, but they are actually the victim in the situation. So unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but it doesn't have any discrimination when it comes to gender. It is definitely more common for women to receive the abuse. With these type of statistics, then we know that children are growing up in the household. We know that children are growing up in households where they're being exposed to domestic violence. And the statistics will also show us that if you are exposed to these particular situations, then you have a higher likelihood of either receiving abuse or being the recipient, or ending up in a situation where you are now the abuser. And so it is unfortunately a cycle that we are trying to break. And that is why we are here today and why we are having these open conversations, so that somebody can raise their hand and decide that they want to break the cycle. So either you're going to break it for yourself, you're going to break it for your children, but somebody is going to break it, or some friend or family member is going to try to intercede on the behalf of somebody and try to help them to see that there can be other options, or there are opportunities for them to remove themselves from the particular situation. So I think this is such a great conversation, because we know that as children grow up, they are highly influenced by their surroundings, whether they are positive or negative. We are all a composite of our experiences. And so that is going to have such an impact on kids, as whatever they see, whatever modeling they see, that will have direct impact.
There's a friend of mine who said, I know, but how do kids repeat that? And I said, let me just make it very simple. I'm going to put it to a base level. The first time your child ever said a cuss word, you went, where did that come from? You know where it came from. you, right? So it's as easy as that. When you grow up, what kind of dishwashing liquid do you use? What kind of laundry detergent do you use?
Yeah.
Probably what you used in the household growing up. What kind of food do you eat?
Yeah.
You eat the food that you had growing
Absolutely.
up. That's what happens with this too. It becomes this emotional mapping that just gets carried on and on. I want to touch on something that you said about men. My son, I remember he came home in 6th grade and he got in trouble in school and he's a very loving, sweet kid and wants to be a clinical psychologist. But he said, Mom, I got in trouble today. I said, why? The teacher said, you should never, ever, ever, young man, you should never, ever hit a woman. And my son said, and a woman should never hit a man. He goes, how about we don't hit each other?
That's good.
And she got mad at him. She goes, oh, you don't understand. It's when a man does it, he goes, but I'm just trying to understand. I don't think human beings should hit each other at all. And we don't teach that. And I think sometimes what we do is we mismessage with our kids about one side versus the other side. We got to work together. It takes both sides for this to stop, right? So we have to work together on treating each other as human beings. That's not how you resolve situations, especially your emotional deficits. Because obviously people who abuse are people who have a deficit in how to communicate, but more than communication, how to settle the conflict within themselves. And we need to be able to say, you need help, we can get help.
I love that. So let's talk about education. Whose job is it to educate the children? The schools, the media, the parents, like educating children on domestic violence outside of the home, because of course, if you're in the home and you see the domestic violence abuse, and of course, like I said earlier, you're more prone to, be a repeated offender. But Deborah, who's whose
the hard
job
part
is that? Because
I,
that's
I would
tough.
normally say the parent, but if
That's
you're the
tough.
parent who's in the middle of it, you can educate them because you can't even take care of it for yourself,
question.
right? So I think it becomes the community in many
whole
ways.
community.
For me as a journalist to share with people, like when we had you on to share your story in your book,
Yes.
And the more of us who can talk about it, the more the message gets out there. Yeah. So ideally, it's a parent who can sit down and say to their child, listen, if anyone ever does this to you, we are there for you. This is not right. And you don't do it to anyone else.
That would be
But then you
ideal.
have our medical community. And that's when you talked
Absolutely.
about what you all do.
Yes, so absolutely. And I think it's a community effort. I think that the education is going to come from various aspects in order for us to be able to have comprehensive education. So we have the media providing a level of education, the healthcare system. We should be identifying situations and then also providing resources, but also helping our children understand what is the expectation. Like, how can you function within conflict? How can you resolve conflict? I think that the educational system has a responsibility to help kids to understand how to resolve disagreements. I think so much of this is really based on just not just based, because I do not want to sound as if I am simplifying the topic that we're having today, but part of it is being able to communicate where you feel the frustration and the irritation, and why is that building to a point of explosion.
And here's the crazy part.
That's
It's
good.
the
Anger.
nuance. It's the nuance of it, right? So we all understand if you're walking down the street and someone slaps your kid, you're going at it. Right? You're like,
That's
oh,
right.
whoa, wait a minute now. And we understand when people respond in a way that's probably not great, but it will respond physically and throw hands. But this is a different nuance. It is a crafted violence, right? And it's because of someone's lack of emotional maturity or whatever trauma, I guess is really what it is, the trauma that they had done. This is a whole different type of abuse, right? We should, yes, always be taught. You don't do. And what's interesting is how many abusers would never, ever get in a fight in public with anybody else. They are the most respectful. Hey, let's break up this fight here. Hey, we need to talk to each other. But abuse of a person they claim to love is a different thing because it's satisfying a sick need in that person.
That's good.
I think we have to also, when we mention community, we have to make it a common practice for therapy and anger management.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Because I didn't know I was an abuser, right? It wasn't until I went to anger management that I realized that I was a verbal abuser, because it's financial, it's physical, it's sexual abuse, and that's verbal, which falls on emotional abuse. And I was like, what? And they were like, no, yeah, you are an abuser. And you're like, oh.
You're like, me?
Me?
I was a victim.
I'm like, what? And so I was offended because I'm like, wait a minute, because I was just taught that domestic violence was physical. And because my grandmother was so volatile towards men, and the women in my family were so strong-willed and so aggressive towards men, that's what I saw. And I just thought that you could just shred a man to pieces and that they didn't feel the emotions that we felt, and that I had the right to come to a person and just say some of the most vicious, vile things, and it was okay as long as I didn't put my hands on you. I have a right to say it. I can say you're not the best looking. I can say things that meet you at your lowest. And no, you're an abuser. If you verbally attack people, if you get on social media and you're up under somebody's post harassing them, you're an abuser. If you're in somebody's inbox you don't know, and you're telling them how much you hate the color purple and how it don't look good on their skin, you're an abuser. If you just think you can just go somewhere and just call somebody some of the most vile, vicious names and have an opinion because you think it's your First Amendment right, you're an abuser.
That's
and
good.
you need to go to anger management, and something in you as a child was triggered that think you have the authority and the right to put your mouth on people because you wouldn't want it done to you.
That's good. And
They're in defense mode.
Yeah.
exactly. And that was my next point. Like, abuse is not just physical. So let's talk about the emotional and mental abuse. I just found out a few years ago taking someone's phone is abuse. Or taking their laptop is abuse.
Unless it's
right?
a teenage child that you're taking it from.
Right, well, right.
That you're paying the
In
bill
that
for.
case, But then again, let's not let them know that, right? The police, because they,
No, you have a right if you pay
Clean
for
your
it
room,
as a
your
parent.
phone's going away. That room is
Exactly.
clean.
No.
In the state of
Trust me.
Texas, you have the right to
But-
discipline a
So
child.
it's isolation.
up to
It's
just
taking
what you
them
said,
away
Dr.
from
Robin,
their-
that is so true, but because these are not things that is shown. These scars are not shown, right? They're not bruises that can be seen when you attack someone's mental or their emotional, well-being. So let's talk about the emotional and mental aspect of abuse, because those are some of the things that's not talked about, right?
That's
when I
true.
first came into this, it was a man beats a woman. Now, I'm out talking about same-sex abuse. It's very relevant, but still, you have to point out that abuse is not just physical. There are so many things. My worst, it's tough for me to say now because abuse is abuse, right? Physical abuse. I mean, getting choked out, black eyes. I've had my ribs cracked, a broke collarbone, put in the hospital 3 times. I mean, you name it, I've done it. But what I can honestly say now is the worst abuse that I ever had was mental. Because when someone has your mind, they have what?
Power.
Power. So let's talk about that.
So I like to take one of the things, or one of my phrases that I say all the time: everybody should have a therapist.
Yes, I'm an advocate.
Like, I don't want to date a man if he not in therapy.
That should actually
You
be
need
one
to
of
have
the
it on your
questions. That should be on the
background.
checklist. That should be on the checklist.
Yes.
Do you have a therapist? Everybody should have a therapist. If everybody had a therapist, if it was something that was ingrained within our society,
Yes.
just like having a primary care doctor, just like your children having a pediatrician, just like women having an OBGYN, if we all had a
Yes.
therapist, there would be so much more conversations because of the revelations that would happen within therapy. And it is very hard. It is very difficult for people to have insight within their own selves.
Unpacking trauma.
It is so
It's hard.
hard. It is so easy to give advice. It is harder to live the life.
Every therapist has a therapist
That's
of their
good.
own.
Yes.
They have a therapist.
Yeah,
of their
even
own
yes,
because
a
they
Right.
therapist should have a
But I want
therapist.
my I needed my therapist to have a therapist when
Yes.
she was done with me.
Absolutely.
I unpacked the whole the whole house on me.
I put my son in therapy, and I'm gonna get
I
a little
felt sorry
off.
for her the first time I started talking. I'm not.
Okay, I'm gonna get kind of off topic here, but sometimes you have to be ready for what you're going to hear. That's the
No,
toughest part,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So my son, I put him in therapy every now and then, and just pull him out, just throughout his life. And I told him 3 times to empty the trash can, and that trash can was still. He goes, I forgot. How do you forget when the Chick-fil-A box is falling off the top because it's so full you can't even get in there?
Exactly.
Okay? Anyway, I took the whole bag, put all the trash in it, and I walked to his room where his friends were and put the bag between it. Hey, how are y'all doing? Can you scooch? And I put the trash bag between them. He came running back. That is so embarrassing and so immature of you, Mom, because I cannot wait to our therapy session. I'm gonna tell the therapist all about it. I said, okay.
Oh.
So he sets it all up. We're getting ready to see the therapist, and he tells the therapist what I did, and the therapist says, well, honey, if you don't want your mom to RSVP, don't send her an invitation.
That's good.
I love it.
So it's like, if you
love
don't
it.
want to hear, then don't send the invitation. But
love it.
back to how it affects us. I have seen it in the workplace, and I recognize it so well. There is, a person I worked with, a manager who, I don't care what you said, it could have made all the sense in the world. Everybody got what was being said, but they would challenge you all the time. Just kept coming back at, like, it was not going to work because, well, no, it will work if you just get out of the way. Why do you keep sawing logs on the railroad track? And so finally one day it just hit me, and I said, all right, boom, let's go. What happened with your mom and dad? And she looked at me and she goes, what? I said, what was going on in your household?
Right.
She said, Dad an alcoholic, Mom bipolar, very violent. I said, okay, we got 6 free sessions with
There
the
it
company.
is.
Take those and use those because it doesn't belong here.
Yeah.
But it does spill out. It impacts people not only
So
within
true.
relationships and their children and how their children act at school, and, dealing with other kids, but in the workplace. And I can spot it sometimes very easily. You can spot it too, where you go, okay, let's talk about what happened in childhood here, and let's get to this point and figure out how we fix this, because society becomes a victim of it, not just the people within those 4 walls.
Verbal abuse, I've heard it put this way, and it makes so much sense, even though it broke my heart to hear it, that verbal abuse hurt worse than a punch.
That's exactly what I was saying.
And so,
you said, yep.
and to hear someone tell you that, like your therapist, your anger management counselor, they're like, you may not have done it physically. You may not. But what happened, what I would do would just think, you just think you have the authority to just say those things, because growing up, I grew up in a toxic household. Then I went to the Marine Corps where they name called, and it was common. They would name call you if you were weak. If you, female Marines make up 1% of the United States. So,
Did you think you had the authority to say it, or were you deflecting before anything could come to you and wound you?
I felt like I had the authority.
You sound very clear about where you were at that moment.
I feel like I had the authority.
Sabrina, let me just let you know, she did the head move.
I love that. I was going to answer that. I don't know. I feel like Dr. Robin felt like she had
I
the
feel
authority.
like I had the authority.
You open your ears and hear what I'm saying to you right now.
Let me berate
Now
you.
we
Let
know
me
why-
degrade
now we
you,
know why you went
desecrate
into
you.
being a police officer.
Yes,
Okay.
and you know what? They say bullies go into the military or the police
Where you have
department where you have authority.
There we go.
Because I came from a household where I was bullied by the adults. So I wanted a voice. I went to the Marine Corps, got a voice, became a sergeant. Okay, now I got into law enforcement, detention officer, then became a police officer. I felt, and it was so, I was always gentle as a police officer. No negative use of force, no negative anything, nothing that would, where I felt like I was triggered to do something. Because that wasn't my kryptonite. My kryptonite was if I felt like I wanted to berate you. You know what I'm saying? When you're an abuser is like opening up a toolbox and picking out what type of abuse you want to use on somebody. And so my toolbox, when I opened it up, it was abuse, but it was verbal abuse behind the scene. If you did something to me, I felt like if you crossed the line with me, I got the right to just leave a nasty voicemail, text you, say something to you, and I had no right. No, you're in the
There's
wrong.
a pedophile
Please get out of my
interviewed
head. That was me.
Right? I felt like I had the right.
There's a pedophile that I interviewed once, and I asked him, I said, so what happened to you as a kid? He said, I was sexually abused. I said, so you know how horrible that felt. Why would you do it yourself? And he said, it's a weird thing, but he said, literally, it was like, I'm doing it because now I'm the aggressor and I can make it okay because I'm the one in power now. I had no power as a child, but now as the pedophile, I have the power. So it's almost like I had no power as a child being berated and belittled, and now you have the power to berate and belittle, but it still doesn't feel good. Right? We think it's a wrong form of therapy, but it still doesn't feel good.
I felt like it's an excuse to when somebody does anything to you, because I was very charming, very friendly, never did anything bad in the military, came out, full honors, law enforcement, nothing bad in my jacket against anybody. But the minute I felt like, even if you bump me in a store line, and
Watch out for you in the grocery store.
Well, it was. I had like for me, it was. I got to get you before you get me.
it was
Defense
flight or
mode.
fight.
Again, defense.
And it was a defense mechanism that I picked up. And not only that, but even the way I was raised up, never had the tools to handle conflict.
Yes, I did not.
The right tools, right? And so my mother's family handled everything with ignorance and physical, putting their hands on each other. So as I grew, that was the first thing I thought about. And baby, I learned how to whip you with my tongue.
Yes.
Nobody could out curse me. Like, nobody.
Bernie Mac is from Chicago.
When I say nobody, I mean nobody.
I'm from Chicago. I'm from
So
Chicago.
when teachers look at your kids and go, where did you get that from?
Bernie Mac is from Chicago. One of the top comedians is from Chicago, and that's how we grew up as kids.
Yeah.
And I have a circle head, right? And they used to tell me, people, Lottie has more head than she got body.
Yeah.
And so they used to go around and doing that, and it was so common. So when I became an adult, I would just say, you know what, I don't like you because you got red hair and you bumped me the other day and your red hair just don't look good with your skin. And I'll walk off. And I not thinking how it made you feel if you had red hair. I wouldn't put my hands on it. I wouldn't do anything. But I knew I'm about to say something about red hair to hurt your feelings. And that was the intent was to hurt.
Yeah, it's to hurt. And I think that's so important to talk about, like, what the intent is. The intent is to hurt.
And hurt
whether
people
it's
hurt people.
Physical hurt, whether it's an emotional
Yes.
hurt, the intent is to hurt. And when you feel that type of hurt, it can truly impact your life to the point where you become limited in how you can navigate life. And even if you're still navigating, even if you're still presenting a good package to the world, still when you lay down at night, like, what are you thinking about? What are your thoughts when you're by yourself, when you first wake up in the morning, when nobody else is around, how you truly look at yourself and feel about yourself, regardless of what your resume looks like. And so I think it's just so important to know that there are so many people in the particular situation where it crosses financial, different realms of financial stability, educational backgrounds, just different women from different experiences are all going through the same thing, but the hurt and the pain is what is shared. And so I think this mental conversation is so good because it allows people to understand that this is something that truly can impact you, where you do not you're unable to be your best self. And if you're unable to be your best self, then you're unable to fulfill whatever true purpose that you're here for.
You're blocking all kinds of things. I mean, there's I said to her one day, I go, you missed a button right here. I was going to read you the button for her. What she heard was, you're so stupid, you can't even dress yourself.
Yes.
She didn't hear me say, hey, you missed a button right here. Let me fix that before we go on the air. She heard, you're so stupid, you can't even dress yourself. And the way that she acted, no one could get it. But my thing is, that comes from someplace else. I always have to be able to say, I didn't do that. That comes from someplace else, and we can talk about that later. But it's how you hear a message and how you receive that message based on how you perceive yourself.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's talk about trauma, PTSD, depression. How does that directly relate to domestic violence and the abuse that a woman or man, take? But if I'm depressed and I'm going through something, and then I'm also in an abusive relationship, then how do you get out of that? Like, how does all of that relate?
I would say, just from my experience, just going through depression, anxiety, shame, 100 miles per hour, also realizing that I was wrong in a lot of aspects. You don't put your mouth on people. You don't harm people with words. And now when the shoe was on the other foot and everybody is saying nasty things about me, I would say, I'm a good person. Don't harm me. And I had to rely on religion. I had to go back to my first love. Jesus was talked about, persecuted, done wrong. He did nothing wrong. And, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they took pleasure in trying to prove Jesus wrong, trying to cast stones upon him. And when I realized that I was a Sadducee and a Pharisee, and that I was just as wrong, you're in the same, to the amount of heartbreak and shame I felt to know I was in the same boat as somebody that would take food from their wives' mouth and children's mouth so that they can't get away. I was in the same boat with somebody that would physically beat a man or a woman to feel better about themselves. That broke my spirit to know that you're in a category, you verbal abuser, you're in a category with them, and they broke me. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm that.
When you can see yourself.
And when I saw, I said, I'm that. And I was weeping and crying, but not for myself, but because I knew what I had did to other people. And because everybody, my family, thought it was okay. And they were like, you're a good person. No, I wasn't a good person. I was masquerading like a good person. I wasn't a good person. Anytime you can just think you can do verbal abuse to people, you're wrong. And so I was weeping and crying out and asking for mercy because of what I've done to other people. And so that's when I just really went back to my first love, and just really just is a one-on-one with me and Jesus, God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I had to lay on the floor because my knees just couldn't do it, because I felt so bad about what I had done to people. Even as a kid, you think back to being a kid in second grade, saying something nasty about a kid to fit in the cool clique, or being in the Marine Corps, and we have the highest rate of suicide, and you're just berating a person because that's what they taught us how to do to make a Marine stronger. And so you're thinking about all the suicides you've seen in the Marines. Then you coming back to seeing suicides as a police officer, and then the thought of suicide come across your mind.
Yeah.
And so I really leaned back on my faith and really gave it over to God, and I told God that I will not harm people with words from my mouth.
That's good.
And that was it. And you take, if you're an abuser, I don't care what, financial, emotional, physical, if you're an abuser, you own up to it, you overcome by your testimony, and you stop doing it, and you help somebody else that's in the same, that's you, or a reflection of you, and you tell them that's not cool to put your mouth on people. It's not cool to hit.
That's good.
My coming to Jesus moment, like, it was March of 2000. I
Okay.
had just gone through a breakup with somebody I should not have been with anyway. Okay, to start with that. It's
good.
like there were no, and I say assets, I don't mean his money or anything. It had nothing to contribute to my life. But in my subconscious, I thought, well, that way he'll be happy to be with me, and he'll stay with me, and we'll be together, right? He broke up with me, and I sunk to my lowest point. I was curled up in a ball in bed, but yet I had the house of my dreams, the car of my dreams, the show, and I had all this, a syndication project that was going to replace Oprah if Oprah didn't resign, and then it just all this stuff, and I thought I had everything, the money, all that stuff that we claim is what makes us successful and happy, but the one thing I did not have was myself. And so when I got to that come to Jesus moment, I first thanked God for what he had given me, and then said, thank you for the wisdom and the light that's coming now of what I really have and what my obligation is to with you by my side. I always say God doesn't do it, he gets you through it, but the obligation that I have to help other people. But for me, it was a combination of coming to that moment when you're right, having known Jesus at some point in your life, he's gonna come back. Right? And my mom used to always say, he might not be there when you want him, but he's always right on time. Right? But also I had great friends around me. And those great friends, it's funny, like we said earlier, they couldn't tell themselves about their relationships, because I'd be looking at them going, why are you with this person, right? But we all had an eye on each other. I remember one, he's from Boston, and he came to my house because no one had seen me for a few days. I was curled up in bed. And then I gets on the phone, Double D, you better answer the door. I'm going to knock it down. You know I can. And I was like, look, I don't have to pay for a door. That's another depressing thing, right? But it took a moment. That's the first time I ever went to therapy. And it was a guest on our show, and she grabbed my hand and she said, hon, your light's gone. She goes, come see me. She saw it. Right. And so after that, I learned about myself. Isn't it funny? You think of the person that should know more about you than anybody else should be you knowing about yourself.
That's right.
But she opened up all those windows, and she's like, if you want the right relationship, change your light, you'll change them off. And it just started that whole revelation process for me. And now my joy and happiness is to see what I was able to do with my tools into my child. There was a situation in 6th grade where there was a kid who said, in order to be in the group to the new kid, you're going to have to spit in so-and-so's food. My son was sitting there, and he went, that's not cool. That's not cool. The teacher called me, and the principal, both of them called me and said, let me tell you what your little boy did. He got that other boy's hand, said, let's go over here. We'll eat lunch over here. They went. They ate lunch for about a week together. Guess what the other kid did? Went back to the group, begging to be in the group. It's okay, you wanted to spit in my food. My son refused to go back. And for the rest of the school year, ate lunch by himself.
Wow.
And he's a good-looking, popular kid, but he goes, Mom, it wasn't worth it. And he goes, and my other friends took me in from elementary school. I said, no, they didn't take you in. These are the kids you took in elementary school.
That's right.
He rescued wounded puppies is what I did as a kid. I call it rescuing wounded puppies because I was a wounded puppy too. But he's the greatest joy again is either when you become a parent, you either become the parent you had, which is the tough thing, right? Or you become the parent you wanted.
That's right.
I hope that I am the parent that I wanted. I tell him I love him every day, and he knows it. And he can talk to me about anything, and I tell him I love him. I didn't hear that growing up, as you mentioned earlier. So when it came from somebody else, you're like, I've been waiting for that for a long time.
It has to come in the home.
But yeah,
come in the home.
Yeah. So that's the for me, that was the thing of coming from myself to a point where I actually thought in my head, if I'm not here, is anyone really going to miss me?
Right.
To downright, now I'm able to raise a nice young man who I hope will be good to a nice young woman one day.
I think my coming to Jesus moment was me writing my memoir. I thought I had it all figured out. I was like, I'm going to tell my stories. I'm going to stand in my truth. This is good. I got the opportunity. I had a big publishing deal. And I started to write with my ghostwriter on the phone. And I found myself talking about what it was like to be a little girl, and I was stuck. And I was like, now and it took me months and months to figure out why I can't tell my story. I realized in that moment I was stuck back there, right? And so that little girl, that 10-year-old little girl who got raped and molested showed up in every relationship. She showed up, and so now, in some of those relationships, I was the abuser, right? But what people don't realize is, even when you're fighting back, it's still domestic violence. If you think because you fought him back and y'all scuffled and everything and you walked off and then you get back together, it's good. No, that's still domestic violence. So even though I fought back at times, I still didn't realize what I was in. But to go back to that little girl, I was 10 years old when I was raped and molested, and I was really stuck there. Now, even though I had, at this point, I had spoke out at churches. I went to my home church. I talked about it. How brave is that, right? To go in front of the people, all the older aunties and everybody that's thinking, how dare you get up and talk about him? He was a reverend. I went back to the church where he presided, right? So I built up all this strength, but then, I got up and so I'm traveling and I'm talking, but then I get ready to write and I realized how much I had suppressed. I was so stuck. And it took me months and months to get past that. And I put the work in. So this is when I was soaking in the tub. They tell you to soak in the tub, like do everything. Nothing was working. So I got another therapist. So I had this therapist, of course, because I thought I was healed. And what I didn't realize was I needed another therapist just to talk about this. So I do believe that, therapy is important. And even though you think one therapist is good, right? There are levels to therapists. Sometimes you outgrow your therapist. So I had to go get another therapist to get me through that. So I say all of that because understanding that there is so much power in standing up for yourself, right? But understanding also too that we can't be ashamed. We can't be, we can't be made to feel powerless in our truth.
Yeah.
Like
your ultimate therapy was writing that book. And
yes.
And you looked at, you looked at me and because I asked you about that woman, because all of us are thinking if we saw that woman today, what we would do. And you said, you know what? But it could have been me. You said you could have done the same thing because you had that level of anger in you as well. That was very telling.
My next point is unforgiveness and unpacking the trauma to the point where you can forgive. I had to forgive so many people, but also too, just like what you said, Dr. Robin, holding a mirror up to yourself. What is the common denominator in all of this trauma and all of this grief and all this pain, right? There is a common denominator, and that's me. And women need to realize that when you are offended or when you are in trauma and you don't put the work in to heal, you're going to attract the same person every single time. And that's what I did. But then I was mad at everybody else because I was like, there's no way it's me. It can't keep being that was me. But the little 10-year-old little girl was showing up in every relationship, as I said, right? She never healed. And she never took the time to say, you know what? She never, her and I never held a conversation for me to tell her it's okay. You can rest now. I got this. And I go back to what you said. The only reason that I am here today is by the grace of God, right? Yes. Totally blind, being able to go out and share my testimony and my story to so many women and stand up bold and courageous is because my faith. Like I had to go back. I denounced God. Who is God? There is no way you could be a God. I am blind. I lost both of my brothers. I lost my fiance in a car wreck, and I had to sit there and watch him die. 8 days later, after the car wreck, I watched him deteriorate. And I was like, there is no way there's a God. But when I understand, and I want to talk about the power of forgiveness, and I want to give you ladies a chance to talk about that too, it directly relates to healing, therapy, being complete, being whole, showing up as your best self. And I think women need to understand that no matter what you go through, there is always another side. I am living proof that there is life after death, right? But it takes a lot of courage. I stood in my memoir, and I had to stand in my truth. And it took months and months and say, you know what? I am the common denominator. Let me back up and heal this. And that was just 3 years ago when I thought I was completely healed. I was courageous enough to write a memoir. That's when you think you're really healed, right? But then start writing it and going back to tears and laying in the bed and not talking for days because I'm like, oh my God, I'm still hurting. I am still really hurting. So understanding the power of forgiveness. I had, like you said, Deborah, I had to forgive her. I had to forgive him. So what comes first? Do you forgive yourself? Do you forgive them? I literally got on my knees and I called out her name. And what does that look like? And I was mad. I was pissed off. I was like, there's no justice. I'm blind. I got 4 children. they had, how dare they do this to me? They had no idea, what they were doing, because, they hurt me, they abused me, but then my children had to suffer. And just going through all of that. So I feel like it is directly related to the trauma, right? Because if I hadn't experienced all of that trauma, would I have been in those domestic relationships? Had I not seen my mom and dad fight, and when I put my little brothers under the bed and covered their ears, would I have been in an abusive relationship, or would I have been the abuser? You just think back to all of these things. But I say all of that because my next point, as we conclude, is self-love. What does self-love look in comparison to being in a domestic violence relationship? The unforgiveness. A woman, what would you tell a woman like who is going through it right now? What would she do? Would she do affirmations? Would she seek counseling? Would she, there's so many different things that women have resources to do. But for me, and I'll start this off, I think it first starts within yourself, holding a mirror up to yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, then how can you expect anyone else to love you? How you really need to be loved. Let's talk about self-love.
So I think you touched on so many good points, Sabrina, Dr. Sabrina. And I think that, one, it's important to acknowledge that even though children that have grown up in households of domestic violence, per the data, per the statistics, are more likely to experience domestic violence themselves, there is still a large subset of individuals who did not grow up in domestic violence, where they grew up in an ideal, and when I say an ideal household, where conflict was able to be resolved in very mature ways. There were open conversations in their homes. Yes, there were disagreements, even maybe yelling at times, but they did not see what we are defining as domestic violence or verbal abuse. And there are individuals who still end up in relationships that we are talking about today. So it's not, I guess, a prerequisite that you have those experiences in order to be in the experience. So I think that people have to give themselves grace, and first just recognize, are you in a situation that is dangerous for you?
That's good.
Whether it's physically or emotionally, are you in a situation that is not healthy for you? And do you feel as if it is a situation, and if you feel that way, then if you're unable to make a decision at that point, having enough self-respect and love to listen to that voice inside of you. If something is saying that this is not a good situation, like it just is chronically happening, it's repeatedly happening, then reaching out to a therapist, talking to friends or family members, trying to get some guidance, some perspective, first opening up. So many people are not wanting to share because they're embarrassed about what's going on.
They tell our hairstylist and our OBGYN and our
yes,
you hear a lot,
you don't
right?
want you don't want your loved one to be judged. You don't want your husband to be judged. You don't want your friends and family members to think that you are with somebody who is not the ideal mate. And so you might not want to share what's going on. But if you have had thoughts like, is anybody else going through this? Like, is this like normal? Like, is this what is to be expected? Having those conversations to first identify, okay, is this a situation that I need to be kind of more mindful of?
Is this benefiting me?
Is it benefiting me?
Yes.
Am I in danger? Like, am I in danger? Like, could my life be threatened, or is it being threatened and I'm not really aware of the severity of the situation?
That's
like
good.
Trying to just come to that understanding. And then once you come to that understanding, deciding, do you and when are you going to implement a plan? Like, that you can move forward. And all of those things are reflections of self-love, because you're
Yes.
trying to elevate yourself above a situation so that you can have clarity, but that you can also have action.
Yeah, you
That's
talked
good.
about that. You said the ideal mate. That's the other thing that gets us in trouble. It's like whenever you say, "Girl, I met a new guy," what's the first thing is, "What does he do?" Because we want to know, is a doctor, lawyer, does he have money, right?
Yeah.
A guy says, "Yeah, I met this new chick. What she look like?"
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's about what she looks
Totally
like, right?
different.
So we still stick to those kind of societal
Yeah.
norms that should not be norms. But when you talk about self-love, for me, it was finally respecting my third ear and my third eye. Right in front of you, you're seeing some stuff or hearing some stuff. And I've gotten real good at, I never knew you. Like I literally would be like, you disrespected me, and that was not an accident, right?
Yes.
That was a level of disrespect where I just never knew you. So I'm sorry, block. Why are you calling me? But I'll even explain to people, didn't really appreciate that. Probably it's best that we're not friends. You know when you are chasing someone's like or love. I will
That's
never chase
good.
it. I will never chase it. We will have mutual respect for each other, because by the same token, I need to treat you with respect too. But if we're not enhancing each other's life in a relationship, whether even friendships, as a friendship or as a loving relationship, then we don't need to be together. And it's okay. That's the problem, is that people try to make it like, oh, how do I tell them? You don't need to. It's just not working. And
that's
so,
good.
I'm just, it's.
If someone
yeah.
can't come in and enhance you.
No, if you're not enhancing my life, then I'm not enhancing yours. And I mean that from friendships to, and how many friendships have we had? That some of them, they're friends for a season.
Yeah.
There's those ones who need you all the time. Can I need you for once? Right?
But
they
how
need you
long
all
did
the
it
time.
take you to figure that out?
Just yesterday.
Oh.
No. Really, it really is the last few years. People always look at me and think I have all this confidence, and you do this and you do that, and I'm like, I'm still that little girl who went to 5 elementary schools and moved from Taiwan to Japan to all around, and then had a parents who just came from that age. They didn't say I love you, and those 3 words, and then I'd see them fight, and so I didn't know where it belonged. But it really hasn't been until the last few years that all the pieces have fallen into place. They've been falling into place, but I feel like right now I'm whole.
That's good.
I always say tear the house down.
Tear
Tear the house down,
Find a new
rebuild
lot.
it. Rebuild it. When I say tear the house down, meaning you tear your personal structure down, whatever you built, however the foundation was built, whether it was built on quicksand, because it would surely wash away. Rebuild the house, build it with godly principles, put God first, and take out what your mama, your daddy, your granny taught you. If it is not pleasing to God and does not align up with the word of God, take it out, rebuild the house so that your house can stand and that you'll be a good person for all to see. You won't even have to say that I belong to God. They will look upon you and say, it's something different about them.
Last question, ladies. What, if you could sum it up in a few words, if there is a lady out there going through domestic violence right now who is looking at this, what would you tell her in this moment?
To give herself grace, and to know that the situation can change. You can make a pivot when you are ready, and that nobody else can identify that timeline for you except for yourself. And you will know. You will know when you are ready. You will know when you need a different space to move in, a different life to live. And when you are ready, then that is the time to put a plan in place. Until then, try to give yourself the opportunity to just come to that decision. And that might be today, it might be a year from now, but if it's in your heart, if it's part of your conscious, if it's something that you're thinking about, then it's probably something that's worth investigating and developing and seeing if this is something that you need to act on.
And I would say, in your isolation, I know you feel like you're isolated from the rest of the world, but there is a village out there waiting to put their arms around you and help guide you through until you can put your arms around yourself. So the first step is reaching out, and there are people who are navigators who can help you with understanding what situation are you in. Is it just money that is your concern? We can help you there. Are you afraid he will hurt you? We can help you there. There are people who, unfortunately, this is their profession because they have to be professionals in this exodus process, right? But and ask yourself some questions. Am I done? Am I done? Am I ready to love myself? Am I ready to respect myself and my children, and remove fear and remove that childhood trauma that kept me here? And if you can say, yes, I am done, there are people, examples right here, who will help you get through.
I would say you are loved. God loves you. You are the apple of God's eye. Your testimony is going to set the captives free. It wasn't in vain.
Oh, that's good. So that was really good. I think that if I had a few words to say to any lady who is in an abusive relationship, and that is that really hold the mirror up to yourself and look at your inner self and understand that you are not your parents, you are not your mother, you are not what you went through, and that no one deserves to be hurt, and love does not hurt. And regardless of what he tells you or she tells you, you are worthy of so much more. Know your worth, get out, get up, stand up for yourself. And just as an example of what we're doing today, we come together to talk about domestic violence just to show that there is education. There is people who will educate you, uplift you, and edify you and build you up. But first, it starts with you. So if you're in a domestic violence relationship, please get out. If you're in a domestic violence relationship, we encourage you to get out today. Don't wait, because tomorrow may be too late.
Yeah. And in your weakest moment, still the most powerful person in your life is you. Even Jesus says, I wait for you to choose me.
Amen.
So you're the most powerful person in your life. Is you.
Amen. Get out.
Oh, you mean like right now?